Switzerland?
Well, things are fine. We just had the new. Also, I'm not a fan of politics. I need to say, but we have a new party popping up over here in Switzerland. It's so-called UP, and in German it means in English it means the Independent Party. And there are three young people which used to be part of the Free Democratic Party, and they founded this new political party, which is classic liberal, heading in the direction of libertarianism. So that was the foundation took place this week. So let's see and wait what they will make out of it.
Well, hopefully something good.
Yeah.
If they're moving towards libertarian platform, I mean, can't be all bad.
Well, at least I know two of the guys, and so they really understand that they have to reduce, rules and regulations, and instead of coming up with new redistribution rules and regulations. So I think that's a good sign. And then, of course, we have the Gold Initiative, which is also now, getting track a bit. I think there is also something coming this year, where the Swiss National Bank, basically the Gold Initiative, is asking for 20% backup of the SMB by physical gold. That's awesome. Also in the pipeline.
I hope that comes through.
Yeah, and then I think the third one, which was quite a surprise, was last week or 2 weeks ago in the Parliament. We had the discussion in the Parliament that they wanted to forbid cash transfers higher than 100,000 Swiss francs. And so the discussion was that it will be forbidden in the future to pay, a car dealer or maybe a house or whatever, that they are that the people are not longer allowed to use cash. And so that was also stopped in the Parliament, which was quite a surprise. Because, when we look at even, the Constitution, then, the only legal tender basically are banknotes. And, all the digital money basically is not considered as a legal tender. So I think even there, people realize that this is also not something which should be, monitored by the government. So I think that's also fine. It just shows, that even, some of the politicians are starting to question a lot of stuff which is coming from the regulators, and which has an impact on our freedom and liberty. And so overall, I was quite positive to see, that kind of stuff moving.
Yeah. So if I understand what you just said, Claudio, that they were trying to pass a bill to not allow the citizens to make cash purchases of over $100,000, but that was defeated.
Yeah,
that's great, because it's really it's nobody's business.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my money. And as long as I didn't earn it illegally, like the banks and the politicians and the criminals, the other criminals, then I should be able to spend it freely and in whatever denomination that I choose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's I like that.
And at the end of the day, because I think it's important, because when we have, you can see everywhere the discussion that all the governments are trying to get away, with cash. So that people just basically use plastic and bank transfers. In Italy, I think you cannot pay anything above 1,000 euros. So that's a clear trend. And right now we had this discussion in Switzerland, and we basically came up with a stop sign. And that's why I think it's really great, because it's really going against the actual trend when you look at all the countries around us.
Yes, because was it Sweden or was it Sweden that has done away with paper currency and it's all digital? There was one country. It was either them or
Sweden is quite extreme when it comes to that, as far as I know. So a lot of Swedish people basically just use plastic, and you even have certain jobs which you cannot pay cash any longer, so you have to use the card. And At the moment it seems anyway, that all these central banks, they don't want to have interest rates, they want to have cash.
Right.
So that would be the next level, to control the whole system a bit better.
Yes, to
Uh,
control the people.
yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean,
So
if they can track every transaction and every step that you make by way of where you're spending money, then they know exactly what you're doing and who you're doing it with and how many times you're doing it and everything about your whole life. And
correct,
you know,
correct.
it's
Yeah,
and it's not that I have anything to hide. It's that it's my business. It's a privacy issue, and it's none of the government's business. It really isn't.
absolutely. I think anyway, that's always maybe when we talk about cash transactions and so on, it's always important because I'm in the physical gold business. I think it's always important that people really need, in these days there is no privacy, and so people really have to make sure that when they do something that they are compliant with the local law, because so that they don't break any local rule when it comes to investment stuff like this. Because I just think that all these bankrupt governments are just going to be extremely nasty in the coming years.
Oh,
So
I
if somebody
disagree.
is trying to hide something, if the government wants, they can track these people down. And of
Yes.
course, they get support from the banking system by delivering some, information and data and stuff like this. So I think it's important to be compliant, just to protect and to be on the safe side, for the coming years.
Yeah,
So
to deal in as much cash and as physical gold and physical silver as possible, because otherwise, because those are completely opaque transactions, and people can't see them, and it really bothers the government and the banking system, which are one and the same these days, that that they can't see what you're doing, and they want to try to paint all of these people, everybody that does, except for themselves, of course, they want to paint us as criminals, and say that we are part of the problem when in fact we are part of the solution.
yeah,
And you know, and
yeah.
but let's give ourselves a little introduction here, Claudio, so that the folks know that who we are and what we're doing. What do you
Sure.
say? Well, howdy, folks. My name is Rory, and this is the dailycoin.org, and we're speaking with Claudio Grass of globalgold.ch, and he is located in Switzerland. And how you doing, Claudio?
Fine, fine. Thank you very much.
It sounds like you guys have a lot going on over there, and it sounds like some of the things are very positive, and it sounds like Liberty is making a positive move with everything that you've just described.
Yeah, I think really some people, especially and now also younger people, they realize something is heading in the wrong direction. That they also realize that I mean, when you look at the house unemployment rate in the eurozone, I mean, you look at the people on food stamps in the United States.
Yes.
So I mean, especially the younger ones over here in Euro and also in the southern nations, of course, the house unemployment between 60% and 30%.
Hmm.
So they realize that something is going wrong, and then you even have the elder generation. And now they just see, for many years that basically the central banks are printing money and that the interest rates are, close to zero. And even for them, now it starts a bit, smelling. And I mean, okay, they are still, most of the people are still trapped in the system, but they realize that something is not going in the direction it should go. So
And
you have more people waking up. I mean, but it's still a small fraction. So, but
it is a small fraction, but as Sean says, there is hope. Sean over at SGT Report. For a long time, I kind of argued with him. They didn't argue with him, but I would debate him and say that it's really not. It doesn't matter. But actually, he's right, and you're right. It does matter, no matter how small the percentage is, as long as we are getting people every day waking up and realizing that the Federal Reserve, in particular, and the Bank of England and the central banks around the world are, in fact, the root of the problem. It's a good day. it's on those days when people aren't waking up that are bad days, and things seem to go afoul even more so. But I believe that as you do what you do, and I do what I do, and when we do these things together, then we have an opportunity to wake up more people all the time, and that's truly the goal. I'm I see glimmers of hope all the time, and I'm very grateful for it. But I wanted to ask you, Claudio, about the Swiss refineries and what's going on there. Are they still working 24/7? Are they? What are you seeing and what are you hearing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the moment, it the last few weeks it really has been more quiet. When it comes to the banking business, with gold, it's completely dead. Also, we have seen that a few banks increased their positions, and that we even have Goldman Sachs basically decreasing their ETF positions. But at the same time, I think they were leaning out 50% of the gold reserves. I think of Ecuador or which country, I'm not
Yes,
sure
it was
anymore.
Ecuador.
Yeah, so I mean they're in the gold business, but when it comes to people are really insecure because of the prices. It really slowed down. I had the refineries on the phone in Switzerland. I mean, they still have, they're still working, so they are very happy with the developments, but the purchases from China, they also came a bit down because of all the most likely troubles China has at the moment. I mean, they really have a huge credit bubble. So, and all the data figures which are available, no one can trust them fully. So we don't know exactly what's going on over there. And then, of course, you still have the restrictions in India. So, which is, gold is still moving to India, but not through the official way or the statistics way. But these that should come down. So, I mean, what can be said is that it slowed down a bit. People are waiting. People are hesitant. However, the fundamentals are still in place. I'm not concerned at all. So I mean, the refineries now, they can basically bring down the delivery delays they had. But what I also heard from the refinery is that they just have that they feel that they have more troubles to get physical supply from the mining especially, and also from people selling back their gold. So I mean the recycled gold is going down. So so what they're facing is really problems when it comes to supply, and I think that's something we really have to look at over the coming months and years. But in general, I mean, I'm very happy, and I believe it's gold is really doing fine
Well,
when it comes.
the last 48 hours. It's done remarkably well. It's moved about $38 since. Let me hit refresh here, and since the 18th at the close at 4:30 or 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, United States, it was at 1277, and as we speak on Friday the 20th, about 10:30 Central, it's at 1316. So that's almost a $30 move.
Yeah.
So to me that's pretty positive. That's pretty positive movement.
The gold price. I mean, so many people have. I think Okay, let's just focus on one fact. Physical gold. We are talking about 0.5% of the people in the Western world are invested in physical gold. So it's a very small market. And so of course, the paper market is 100 times bigger. So I mean, I really don't look into the prices. I don't care basically if it's 1287 or 1316. Because really the way I look at gold, at physical gold, that's really my insurance. And my insurance has to perform when I need the insurance. And gold is the insurance against, a crash of the actual system. And I'm 100% convinced that it will perform in such a crisis scenario, because that's just what we learned from history. And, what has been money for 5,000 years will be money, for at least another 5,000 years. and
Yes.
paper, yeah, paper. The U.S. dollar as world currency reserve, 40 years. So yeah,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
history shows that the fiat currencies cycle out, or their life cycle is about 40 years. So,
absolutely, yeah,
and so the dollar is at the end of its, historical life cycle. It's actually a little past. So we're well into it, into the death throes of the U.S. dollar. And I wanted to ask you about Jim Rickards, and I don't know if you follow his work or not, but he has been all over everywhere, just about daily, doing interviews. And he recently spoke about a $9,000 price for gold, but as a global SDR backed currency. He's
yeah.
and what do you think about that? I mean, as far as, first of all, the SDR as a special drawing rights issued by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, being a global currency, and do you think that it being backed by $9,000 an ounce gold, do you think that I don't know. I question it.
I mean, no one knows the future, and I don't know. I really don't know what's coming at the end of the day. And most likely, I don't know, and no one knows how long it will last. I believe, not too many years, most likely. If we don't know if it will end, just in a collapse, or if it will end, with another war, and what we have seen in the. I mean, every time when the system, you know, always in the past, basically the outcome was war. So at the moment we are in a currency war.
Yes.
Instead of using missiles and weapons and soldiers in the Western world, we're basically using our currencies. But the outcome is the same, destruction.
Yes.
And so I really don't know. I mean, I'm reading, I like Jim Rickards very much. I'm also reading his books. I don't know what I should, I think it's pure speculation. At the end of the day, what I believe is, when paper, when the paper system is going to collapse, I mean, back in 1928, in the Weimar Republic, for example, an ounce of gold bought you a villa in Berlin, a big house
Yeah.
in Berlin. So, and I think that will happen, in the future again, because gold and also silver, that's just, it's money. I mean, everything else is credit, and gold and silver is money. And that's how, even paper notes came into existence, because it used to be it used to be backed by a certain amount of gold or silver. And so I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, and paper was merely a representation of those items, of the gold or the silver, and it actually was stated on the note that, that this note does in fact represent $20 worth of gold, or this note represents, $2 worth of silver. And
Correct.
and until we get back to that, I think that it's just, we're going to continue to be slaves to the central banks, because they own the money.
Yeah, I mean, they basically could decide how much they want to print, how much it is worth, so, how much interest they can tax, and who is going to receive it. And so, in a system such as this, I mean, that's just a system without having, property rights are only of temporary nature, because basically they can inflate your wealth away, or they can deflate it. So you're always the hunted one, when they basically control the money and the money supply itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I wanted to ask you about, you had mentioned them taking us to war, and that has been historically a big part of their playbook. And it seems like that right now their 40-year old narrative for the U.S. fiat dollar and the world reserve currency is running out and running thin, and they've got all of these situations going on in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe, as far as Ukraine and Russia, and everything that's going on there. And how do you see these situations playing out over the next, say, 6 to 8 months?
Oh, I think I don't see a big war on the horizon. Because no one, it's not of the interest. I think even Putin most likely is not interested to have a war against NATO or the United States, and I think even USA is not interested to have a war against Russia and China and so on. But what I see is what you can also see when we look into history, all these periods basically led to a massive centralization within the system. And so at the moment, I think the banks are profiting, the governments are profiting, and also big business, and especially the military-industrial complex is profiting. I mean, look at the shares; they went up, and so crisis is basically, when you have a smaller cake getting smaller, you have to assure that the pressure groups or with the strongest lobbyists, that they basically, they make sure that they will get their fair share from a smaller cake. And I think that's definitely the military industrial complex. They can sell weapons. As long as there are so many wars, they can supply both sides. I mean, I think they don't care that much as long as they make good business and can assure that even in a deflationary environment where the real economy is going down, that they can assure that they get enough out of the system.
Well, so I tend to agree with that. Excuse me. I agree with that to a point, but I think that history is a great teacher, and that as the currency wars in the past, as the currency wars have escalated, they've always run out of where to go to next, so they always started bombing and killing on a mass scale. And I don't know if it's going to happen within the next year or the next 2 years or when it's going to happen, but I believe that it is coming. And I think that the rhetoric that is being tossed around all over the world is pointing in that same direction.
I mean, in midterm, I also think that I also believe, that's absolutely a scenario which is likely. But I think, we are living in these mass democracies, and, most likely do you also remember, when Obama wanted to intervene in Syria a few months ago, and basically the American people were against it.
Yes.
So, you cannot have a big war without having people backing you up, the people perception. You have to work on that. And so I think at the moment, even in Europe or in the United States, I mean, I don't see the people supporting a big war. But as I said, at the beginning, we have this high unemployment rate, and we have a real economy which is really going nowhere. And we have, I mean, the official unemployment rate in the States is 23%. I mean, the official, as per shadow stats, based on the calculation method of 1980. And over here in Europe, the situation is also as worse. And now what we can see is basically, only the money is going into the stock market, and now negative interest rates in Europe and so on. I mean, basically it leads to the fact that instead of depositing that the banks are depositing the money at the central banks because they have now negative interest rates, that they're most likely going to go into government bonds. And so we have a booming stock market which can go on, for as long as they print.
Right.
It can go up, and then at least the people who have something, they feel comfortable. At the same time, we can see that the government can increase their debt, so they basically can use that money to feed the poorest to try to avoid that there is too much social unrest, etc. But in the meantime, the middle class is going to be destroyed, and I think this is something which I'm really scared. Which worries me, because if that will stay, if we stay in the next 3, 4, 5 years, it will have you're poisoning a whole generation, and you're poisoning a lot of people when they don't have perspectives. And so I think that that's definitely a potential threat when it comes, to a worse scenario in the next few years. And then, of course, when we see what's happening in the Middle East with the Shias and the Sunnis, and I think that's Sectarian war, which is really going to be escalated, and we have Ukraine, which is going into a real. It seems to be, at least, that they kind of have a real civil war. So I think all that stuff, and you also Africa, and even we have and Asia, of course, as well. We have the islands where basically China and Japan are fighting because of raw resources and so on. So I think this is going to accelerate most likely in the future. I think we're not going to see in the coming years a more peaceful planet than we have today. So I think it's just heading in that direction. And the middle class is going to be impoverished because, if we could create wealth out of the printing press, then we could really, every one of us, 1 million, on an annual basis is good enough that we can live. But we also know, this is not working. So I think, we are in a period of time where a lot of people are going to be poisoned. And when they don't have perspectives, when they don't have possibility for a better life to pursue their happiness, I think that has a very negative impact.
Yes, and I think that and I'd forgotten about Africa completely and the conflicts that are going on there. You've just got, and you may be right, Claudio, as far as just regional wars, where the military-industrial complex on a global scale can continue to line their pockets and, kill a few thousand people a year and blow up a few cities where Bechtel and, the Halliburton, where these organizations are able to clean up and once again line their pockets and in the meantime use the printing press to completely wipe out the middle class on a global scale. Because I don't think that there will be a middle class within the next 15 to 20 years. I don't really see that. I don't see how it can continue to exist. It'll be a situation, from my perspective, of haves and have-nots, and that'll be it.
Yeah,
if
as long as the system. Sorry.
If we continue along the same path that we're on currently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. That's why. One of the best stuff to protect yourself is really, by owning physical precious metals outside the banking system nearby you or in a different jurisdiction, which is safeguarding property rights. And at least then you have an insurance. Then you really, whatever happens. But I think, I don't, we have a diminishing power of, everything with interest rates down to zero and money printing, for free, everything becomes an illusion.
Yes.
Now everyone can buy a house because it's, you get the house almost for free, because you only pay, 0.9 or 1.2% for a mortgage. So it's more expensive to rent a house or an apartment than to buy and to take a mortgage. So this is really, they are playing with the time preference of the people, and the more they are propping up the market, definitely the deeper the fall. And I think really that's, as you said, I think also we are at the end of a long-term debt cycle, which is, usually in the past it used to be between 40 and 70 years. And so the question is definitely, when will it end? But I also believe, the coming next few years will be not really nice. Most of all the people in the West are going to lose, and all the productive people at least.
Yep.
So that's why we have to talk about, and we have to talk about the principles of liberty and decentralization and federalistic structures and limiting the power of the politicians and explaining to people that really government used to be the biggest threat, or that you should not trust government blindly, that you always have to question. And that also, the educational system, which is dominated by the government, and raising children from six years old, taking away the responsibility from the family, and forcing, the mother also to go to work instead of raising the children. I don't want to say, in this regard, I want to say everyone is able, they should freely decide if they want to raise the children themselves, or if they want to find a school or whatever. But I think the system we are in is really leading for a lot of people both have to work.
Yes,
it's a question of money, and to, maybe also to have a decent life. And in the past, one income was good enough, and today we need two incomes, and some of them have 2-3 jobs. So
we need to have at least 2 incomes, and it's amazing because just within a few short decades, we've gone from a single income household to where today it's almost a requirement to have at least 2 incomes, if not more. I mean, I work outside the home, and I have a job, and my boss, who makes a whole lot more money than I do, he and his wife, they both work, and he has a part-time job, which is completely insane.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and that is merely to keep roof over his head and food on the table for he and his family. I mean, and we're just seeing, I'm seeing more and more of that every day. And like you were saying a minute ago, John Williams' shadow stats, then he uses, the metrics from from the 80s, and that show the true numbers of unemployment and what's going on with inflation, and both of these are running much, much higher than what we're being told. And and like you said, Claudio, also, we have to educate people so that they can be better prepared, so that they understand that liberty is at stake here, that your freedoms are at stake, that your money is being stolen, your life is being stolen. And one of the ways to better protect that is to break away from that system by using gold, by using silver as money, and if you're not going to use them, at least have them for an insurance policy. So
and also maybe to think about some fundamental questions and to start changing. I mean, change always needs to come from inside, and so as people have to change first themselves. And so I mean, no one knows the truth. But I believe, when it comes to education, or the Austrian School of Economics, or book summaries, or the Mises Institute, or people who basically defend liberty and the non-force principle, I think that these are just the better ideas. And I think a lot of people, when they hear about those kind of ideas and argumentations, then I think we just have the better arguments than all those statists.
yes,
and the more we spread the word, I mean, that's how I used to be. I mean, you know that. I mean, I used to work for the United Nations 2 years in the Middle East, so I was really a statist. I was.
You were all up in it.
Yeah, and the good stuff was really that when I was in the Middle East, that I took books along from Hayek and Mises and Ropart. And then in combination with what I learned, what the UN is, and how the UN works, and that supranational organizations are just a big lie and a big fraud.
Yeah.
So that changed my way of thinking completely, and then and it basically took one book, to make me think, and and then I just went deeper into it and into it. So I think it doesn't take a lot. And most of the people, they still realize, what's good and what's bad. They just have to hear about it, and then that's how we can spread.
Yes, they just have to hear about it, and then it can spread. And hopefully, we can we can reach a few with this interview. And is there anything, Claudio, that you would like to leave the folks with?
Yeah, maybe. I think you also put it on your website. I mean, we did two. I did one special report about the boom versus bust, explaining the business cycles from an Austrian perspective. So basically, the people who are interested in finding out why do we have a boom, and why do we have a bust, who stands behind it, what kind of elements must be there, so that you basically have these artificial cycles. That I think then they can Google for the Clean Slate report. We call it Clean Slate, and it's explaining, I think, on 12 pages, the boom versus the bust cycles. I think that's really one of the best reports we've ever done. And we also published, I think 2 days ago, a presentation. I gave a presentation in April in Miami at an investor conference. So explaining, our big picture based on hard facts. And that presentation is available. I think it's on the net. You can find it on your homepage, or otherwise you can Google the coming crash of the financial and monetary system. It's a presentation about 22 minutes long, and it really, it addresses the fundamental stuff. So the unemployment rate, the total debt, how much debt we basically, 99% of the debt of the United States since 1971. So that's maybe, a short answer to the input you gave a few minutes ago when you were saying, hey, in the past, one salary was good enough, and within a generation it changed. I think that's really because, because they just injected so much. In 1946, basically the average yearly debt was 3.1 billion, for between 1946 and 66. And today, I mean, the average is 1,300 billion. So, I mean, in 1946, it took the government 1 year to add a debt of 3.1 billion. And today, when boomers retire, it takes the government 20 hours to do the same. And so it just shows, that this is really, I mean, this is just amazing. This is so unsustainable. This is just a crazy, crazy world. And so I hope, when the people look at this presentation, they really I hope that they find it interesting, and they might learn something. So, yeah, that's it, basically.
Yeah, and you can find those at thedailycoin.org. You can also find them at SGT Report, as well as goldsilverworlds.com. And all three of those websites have Claudio's work posted. And Claudio, do you have it posted at your website as well?
Yeah, it's also on our website under the news section.
Okay.
And we have this quarterly outlook report. I mean, the main article was about the comparison between 1914 and 2014, and we had an interview with Dimitri Speck about the gold price manipulations. And we also have made a book summary about America's Second Crusade. So basically, a very good book written back in 1954, and it just shows, it gives another point of view, especially on the Second World War, and how how politicians lied the people into war. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good source, and it's also, I mean, the facts are also coming from official government protocols. So at least it's not a conspiracy or that somebody could say. I mean, everyone, conspiracy is always, it's something, nothing against conspiracy. I mean, when two people basically make a secret, how do you say, decide something, then that's a conspiracy. But today, conspiracy is always negative, and these are crazy people and so on.
Yes.
So I mean, but that book is really, well researched, and I found it also on the Mises homepage. So they also published that book. So it just, really, as I said, we try to gold is sound money for a sound society, and as long, I think that's gold. A sound money is really key for the future. As long as people don't understand that they should not accept paper money coming from somewhere created out of nothing, as long as they accept this, we really, we are really in trouble. And for a certain period of time, it can work. It always can work to make more debt, but at the end of the day, the debt needs to be paid, and that's what we are facing now. So, yeah,
that is what we're facing now. And with that, I won't take up any more of your time, Claudio, and I certainly appreciate all of your time today. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I will get I'll add the links to your articles and to your website into the About section under this video, and you guys can just click on those and take you right to them. And Claudio, I certainly appreciate it.
Hey, cool. Thank you very much, Rory. I also appreciate our regular discussions.
And I will talk with you soon, my friend.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon, my friend. Take care. Bye-bye, Rory.